If I could sing an endless song, at least 10,000 lifetimes long, I would sing a soft, sweet song of my love for you. In this song, there'll be a prayer for everybody, everywhere, that each soul would find their home and the one they love. You'd hear the melody in the trees, in the birds, the grass, and the breeze. The beat would be your heart, the words would rearrange as your seasons change. If I could sing an endless song, I'd have the angels sing along. We would sing a soft, sweet song of our love for you.
Dennis Raffelock is our musician today. I thank you so much for being here. He sang his song. It's an original, If I Could Sing an Endless Song. Dennis, I got to know a little bit as I was preparing this service, and he is from Shelter Island. There are CDs out there, and he's also performing now that we're out and about. He'll be at Barron's Cove this Friday and on Saturday at Pridwin's Hotel.
Can I just add that? I just want to add that I'm a musician. Guitar is really not my instrument. I mostly play upright bass and sing. So both my gigs this weekend, we play Friday night, Saturday night.
Well, we're so lucky to have you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the South Fork. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you vote, wherever you are on your life's journey, whatever your name for the sacred, you are very welcome here. We take this time to acknowledge the Native people who claimed this land as home before European colonization, the Montaukett, our neighbors, the Shinnecock, the Korshog, and the Manhasset. My name is Pam Wittenberg, and I am your worship associate today. Our tech hosts are Carl Wittenberg at the computer and Tuna Flores at the camera. I am pleased to welcome the Reverend Linda Anderson, who has been ordained as a UU minister since 1992. In all of the 30 plus years of her dedicated service, from the Catskills to hospital chaplaincy, to her leadership in workshops on listening, meditation, to her leadership on conflict resolution, her assistance with the dying and those who are dear to them. And I remember being part of many retreats with Linda, Reverend Linda, to being the president of LIAC. If those of you who don't know, it's the Long Island Area Council, of which all 11 of us are a part, the 11 UU congregations on Long Island. There are so many ways that the Reverend Linda Anderson is serving and has served, and we are grateful you are here to present your service entitled No Mud, No Lotus, as part of July's Circle of Life sermons. Thank you. We are moving on now in your order of service to our announcements this week. I just want you to know that our Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson, who's usually at the pulpit, will be away until July 31st. For pastoral emergencies, you can reach her on her cell phone, which is listed in the directory. Next Sunday is the last Sunday of the month, and we have Dress Down Sunday for our garden over here. It would be great if you could bring your tools and your helping hands, and we can go out there for about an hour and clean up. Are there any other brief announcements to make? You can raise your hand, and those of you on Zoom too can let us know. Okay. You can find more information about how to connect to events this week in your e-bulletin and on the events calendar on our website. You can get announcements that you would like announced to the congregation to our administrator, Kelly, by Tuesday of the week you would like them announced. I see new faces. If you are a visitor and you'd like to introduce yourself, you may do so now if you'd like. In any case, oh, please, come up. Welcome. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Beat Barblan. I'm from the Morristown Unitarian Fellowship. We're here to visit our friend Sue. And I feel compelled to share that we were at a memorial service yesterday, and under the picture of our friend who had passed away was a saying, "No mud, no lotus," which I think is the theme of today. That was extraordinary. Thanks for having us.
I'm Tanya Van Order. I'm with Beat with the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship because we just changed our name. So I wanted to just say that. So glad to be here.
It's wonderful. You can also sign our virtual guest book using the link in a chat for those of you on Zoom, and someone from our Caring Connection team, which is led by Carolyn Holstein right here. She will be in touch with you. You will find today's order of service, including the song titles provided by our musician, Dennis Raffelock, as well as the lyrics to the hymns we will be singing together using the link in your chat. Okay, now our opening words are by the Reverend Linda Anderson.
These words are from a poem by the Reverend Sean Parker Dennison. The poem is called In Praise of Praise. Sean is one of the founders of Trust, TRUUST, Transgender Religious UU Professionals Together. And they say, yes, even now, when so much is broken, praise tears that won't be held back. Yes, even now, when so much is struggle, praise bodies that sweat and tremble, muscles tense with embodied comprehension that we may be headed the wrong way. Yes, especially now, when so much is at stake, praise something, anything so alive and extravagant that it awakens and calls you to discard despair, abandon apathy, and praise whatever brings you back to life. We light our chalice today for all that brings us back to life. Our hymn is hymn number 128, For All That Is Our Life. And I don't know if you are asked to rise as you are willing and able, but if you want to do that, that's cool.
sing our thanks and praise for all that is a gift, which we are called to use. You will the common good. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its reward, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrows we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all that is a gift, which we are called to use, to build a common good, and make our own days glad.
Our next part of our service is the first message by Reverend Linda, No Mud, No Lotus.
So hi. It's nice to be here again. And I see that you have gone to what my congregation has gone through. That's the Freeport congregation, which is apparently mask optional. May you be all well. I don't think I've ever told you how much I love to kayak and how drawn I am to the water, even though I fear it, mightily I fear it, as so much stronger and more powerful than me. So given that, imagine my curiosity, really amazement, horror, when I came upon the story of a Polish man who kayaked alone across the Atlantic Ocean, kayaked alone across the Atlantic Ocean, and not once, but 3 different times, completing the last trip just short of his 71st birthday. Okay, then. Why? What drew him, to such an undertaking or undertakings? Elizabeth Weil, in her article Alone at Sea, tells his story. And she says he had no illusion that everything is meaningful and enjoyable all the time, but he had this way of flipping his mind to embrace the suffering and embrace what a lot of us would see as meaninglessness, like essentially being a speck in the universe and deciding just to rush towards all of it and make himself the tiniest speck in the biggest universe he could possibly imagine in his kayak alone on the Atlantic Ocean. What most of us experience as suffering, he repurposes as contrarian self-determination. And that gives him an existential thrill. His name is Alexander Doba. The first trip he made was between Senegal and Brazil, a narrower, more calm part of the ocean, of the Atlantic. The second trip, a little more adventurous, went from Portugal to Florida. And the third, the most difficult because of the weather and the ocean conditions and the distance, was from New Jersey to France. He started out in New Jersey at Barnegat Bay, which is the place that John Murray landed in New Jersey in 1776. He was fleeing England, and ultimately he is one of the people that publicized and popularized universalism in this country. A kind of a nice coincidence. So Elizabeth Weil asked Doba, why did he go on the third trip? How did he justify that to himself? And this is his answer. To go into the sea and die, that would be a problem for my family. I imagined that it might have been. He says, I came very close to the line of my possibility and human possibility. But, and then he stopped. And Elizabeth Weil goes on to say what he did not say, but what was hanging in the air was that it would not have been a big problem for him to go into the sea and die. He had made his own bargain with the human condition. Doba's response to his wife, Gabriella, her concern about what would he do in a crisis was that there would be no crisis, even though the closest land was the bottom of the ocean. He didn't say this because he's naive. He said it because he's reimagined the concept of crisis, just as he has reimagined the concept of suffering. A crisis, in Doba's worldview, is an opportunity for triumph. So Doba moves toward the crisis just as he moves toward the suffering. By choosing it, he casts himself into the role of hero and not the role of victim, and he gives himself control. One person's bargain with the suffering baked into the human condition, one person's dance with suffering is to embrace it in order to triumph over it. Now, I'm making a guess here, but I don't think any one of you has ever kayaked across the Atlantic Ocean, whether alone or in a double kayak. Although, you know, someone here might very well be planning such a journey. But the idea of taking on suffering in order to triumph over it, that is not an unfamiliar one. It's common in the world of cancer treatment, where our relationship with cancer is often termed a battle, a fight, even a war. We take on the suffering caused by the treatment in order to gain control over the disease. My cousin Judy recently told me that she has a mass on her pancreas, in other words, cancer. And she's taking on chemotherapy and surgery, and then more chemotherapy, because she feels that she can, in her words, beat it. Judy's bargain with the suffering of the human condition has similarities to Doba's. And sometimes that's what we need, to embrace it in order to feel the sense of control over it. And maybe some of that might sound familiar to some. Another take on the idea of triumphing through suffering appears as Catholic and some Reformed theology that sees suffering as redemptive. Suffering saves us, as modeled by Jesus' suffering on the cross and his death, which atoned for the sins of humanity. Another bargain with the human condition. I can remember when I was a teenager, I was raised Episcopalian. I was really very, very religious. And I would go to church on Good Friday. I would go at noon and I would stay there until 3 p.m. on my knees in the pew, kneeling the whole time. I believed the pain, and it was painful, brought me closer to what Jesus suffered on that day, brought me closer to Jesus and purified me in some way. Does suffering make us better, make us closer to God? Have you ever experienced it that way? Unitarian Universalist theologian Rebecca Parker wrote a book with a Christian theologian, Rita Nakashima Brock, and the book is called Proverbs of Ashes, in which they argue that the idea that suffering ennobles us and saves us has been used by the church to sanction domestic violence and abuse. I don't know how true this is across the board, but I do have experience with people I know when parish priests have counseled women to stay in a violent relationship with their husbands, saying that wives should obey their husbands and God would reward them after death. Parker and Brock argue that suffering does not save us. We do not triumph over suffering. Instead, they insist that we're saved by diverse, supportive communities of loving persons. And there we experience the presence of God. I recommend the book to you. It's challenging. Obviously, this question, at least for me, is how to both understand and even make something out of the suffering that we encounter in life. I'm not looking for an answer as to why we suffer. That question, that why question, I suspect, really doesn't have a comprehensive answer beyond that we do suffer, at least for me. I remember my own experience with cancer. A friend told me that people ask, why me? Why does this happen to me when they receive a diagnosis? And my friend suggested the question should be, why not me? It was helpful. Interestingly enough, it was helpful. And I could accept that. So I'm not looking to answer the question why. I'm looking for meaning, because meaningless suffering is too much to bear. Is attempting to triumph over suffering, is that the only way to think about it and be with it? What if you can't triumph over it? What if you can't be victorious? What then? What's your bargain with the human condition? Buddhism, of course, asserts right up front that there's suffering in the world. There are reasons for it, and there is a path to make it less. What bargains with the human condition do Buddhists make? And I can't speak for all Buddhists because there's so much diversity, but I can offer that my teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, has a saying, no mud, no lotus, by which he means that suffering and happiness are interrelated and actually transform in the presence of each other. A lotus lives in still water. It has its roots in the mud at the bottom of the still water. And it sends up stems, which then bear leaves, which sit on the water. And the beautiful flowers rise up and bloom above the leaves. No mud, no lotus. The flower needs the muck at the bottom of the water to come to life. The flower becomes the muck when it dies. The muck eventually gives rise to another lotus. Maybe when triumphing over suffering is not possible, and we don't accept that suffering makes us more holy, no mud, no lotus might be a useful way to think about it. Our suffering and our joy may live on two sides of the same coin. And in that case, how can we be with suffering? We'll look at that more in the second message.
May your roots grow deep. May your branches spread far. May you find the world to be a beautiful place and leave it better for those who follow. We support the work of this congregation through the gift of our time, our talents, and our treasure. Your financial contributions support the ongoing work of the congregation, including worship, religious exploration, and community care and connection. We will pass around a basket in the back for this service. And there are two other ones in the back if you'd like. One is for the Helping Hands Fund, which is part of our minister's discretionary fund. And the other is for our food pantry. For those of you on Zoom, you can contribute using PayPal with the link in the chat. Any checks written or made out to UUCSF. We have a PO box. And Sunday offering is written on the memo line. So while that is happening, we have our offertory song by Dennis Raffelock. There, I said it again, written by Red Evans and David Mann.
I love you. There's nothing to hide. It's better than burning inside. I love you. No use to pretend. I said it. What more can I say? Believe me, there's no other way. I love you. I will till the end. There, I said it again. I tried to drum up the phrase that would sum up all that I feel for you. What good are phrases? The thought that amazes is you love me, and it's heavenly. Forgive me for wanting you so. But one thing I want you to know, I've loved you since heaven knows when. There, I said it again. There, I said it again. I'll say it again and again.
Thank you, Dennis. Now is the time in our community of shared faith when we share the deep joys and sorrows, concerns in our hearts. We have candles up here. If anyone in the room would like to come up and light a candle, those of you on Zoom can raise your hand and we'll light a candle for you.
May that candle's light go out to the entire world, ease the suffering and celebrate the joys of everyone. The spirit of prayer, of meditation, reflection, Not Altogether Lost by Rabindranath Tagore, the Indian poet, philosopher, and social activist. I know that this life, missing its ripeness in love, is not altogether lost. I know that the flowers that fade in the dawn, the streams that strayed in the desert, are not altogether lost. I know that whatever lags behind in this life, laden with slowness, is not altogether lost. I know that my dreams that are still unfulfilled and my melodies still unstruck are clinging to my lute strings, and they are not altogether lost. As we move into a short time of silence, may we be aware that all in our lives is not altogether lost. As we sit with this community today, whether virtually or in person, may we know peace, may we know joy, may it be so. And as we bring ourselves back, take another deep breath, and let's sing hymn number 108, My Life Flows On in Endless Song. Please rise as you're willing and able. Though the tempest round us roars, how do we keep on singing? How can we be with suffering? I think there's something to be learned here from compost. According to Cornell University, there are 3 main stages in the composting cycle. So let me make the disclaimer here. I'm from New York City. I don't know anything about this stuff. But there are 3 main stages in the composting cycle in which different types of microorganisms thrive. And the first stage, typically only a couple of days, during which microorganisms begin to physically break down the biodegradable compounds. And the byproduct of that, of course, is heat. And the temperatures quickly rise to over 104 degrees Fahrenheit. So that brings on the second stage, which can last from a few days, apparently, to several months. And different microbes are working now, breaking down the organic materials into finer pieces. The third stage lasts again for several months. When the temperatures cool a little bit, finishes the breaking down of the remaining organic matter into usable humus, dirt. When something happens that causes us to suffer, it can feel like we're being broken down by worry, by fear, by pain, by helplessness, by poverty, by addiction, and more. Like microorganisms are eating us, taking away parts of our lives. When we suffer, it can be all that we think about. It can require all of our attention just to get through. When Doba set out on the Atlantic in that kayak, he took out his hearing aids and he took off all his clothing, breaking down everything to the kayak, the ocean, and him. In times of great grief and sadness, loss has seemed like it's taken over my life. In times of great fear and uncertainty, the anticipation of being powerless against the worst has felt like it's taken over my life. And in times of great physical pain, all I can think about are the screaming feelings in my body, and I want them to stop. Takes over my life. Those microorganisms of suffering breaking us down. What we need to remember is that the microorganisms of suffering are not only breaking us down, they are also transforming us into something else. No mud, no lotus. What that something else is that we're being transformed into, to an important degree, that is within our control, just as it is with composting. Those microorganisms involved in composting work, they work most efficiently when oxygen is present in the organic matter that's being composted. They consume the organic waste and they excrete chemicals such as nitrogen, phosphorus, magnesium, which are all nutrients in the soil that are needed by plants. Composting also produces carbon dioxide, and we know that carbon dioxide can harm the environment. However, when organic waste ends up in a landfill, methane or nitrous oxide is produced. Due to the nature of the landfill, everything is packed down so close, so hard. And methane harms the environment much more than carbon dioxide. One thing about suffering is that you don't often feel like you have any control over it, which is why triumphing over suffering, I think, is so appealing. But we do have choices about what we do with our suffering, just as we have choices about composting our corn cobs or throwing them away. We can get stuck in the painful episodes of our lives, which is completely understandable. And perhaps this happened to you. It certainly happened to me. But we can get stuck and relive them again and again, whether we intend to do that or not. Often children mistreated in their childhood grow up to be adults who mistreat the people in their adult homes. We say we're never going to do what our parents did, and then we do. We can blame ourselves over and over, beat ourselves up, tell ourselves how absolutely unworthy we are. And while this can feel not so good, in some ways, honestly, it feels better than looking at our part in a painful situation, taking responsibility for it, figuring out how to change. Or we can get stuck blaming someone else, or blaming God or the universe, and carry around a resentment that we didn't deserve this. And in many cases, we didn't deserve this. And this too can feel not so good. And at the same time, though, it shields us from the pain at having to look at uncomfortable truths. Only one of which is that it doesn't always matter whether we deserved it or not. Stuck in suffering is like throwing the corn cob into the landfill, where it gets pressed so tightly that the microorganisms that would break it down do not do their job very efficiently. Facing the reality of suffering with acceptance as it is, not more, not less. Facing the reality of any part we may have in it, whether intentionally or unintentionally, that doesn't mean we can't do anything about it. Facing the reality of suffering actually, I believe, gives us room to look at what we can do to make it less. It's like, for me, putting the corn cob on the compost pile. And just like with compost, the right ingredients in the best possible conditions you can muster can help us change not only our food waste, but also our suffering into something less painful and at times even instructive and strengthening. Not always, but at times. No mud, no lotus. Not all food waste can be composted. I'm sure you know that. No to meat, no to dairy, and yes to fruits and vegetables. And when putting things into the compost bin, this is new news for me, it's best to layer them so the composting proceeds most efficiently. Greens are typically food scraps like fruit and vegetable peelings, coffee grounds, or if you have a yard, grass clippings. Browns are more carbon rich. Think egg cartons, newspapers, dried leaves, pine needles. When you're layering, apparently, you want the dry browns on the bottom and the wet greens on the top. Who knew? The ingredients of compost remind me, though, that the feelings invoked by suffering are the ingredients of suffering. The sorrow, the despair, the emptiness, the hopelessness, the rage, the anger, the loneliness are some of suffering's powerful emotions. It's not fun to feel them for any length of time, yet allowing them to emerge actually helps us get through them. The only way through is through. So many of us cover up our suffering by distracting ourselves with busyness or with consumption in all of the many ways we can consume stuff. We cover up the feelings with dismissing them as though we had no right to feel so bad because other people in the world have it worse, which may be completely so. It doesn't mean we don't have the right to feel bad. Or maybe we're afraid that if we start to let those tears fall, they're never going to stop. They will. They do. Giving them some time to be felt gives us some ease, gives us at least a little time to experience more of life. Just as the wet green material complements the dry brown material in the compost pile. Uh-oh. iPad problem. So the beauty that's all around us, and even the small joys that are all around us, can complement our suffering. It's like if you imagine an old-fashioned balance scale and suffering is here, and this is what it might feel like. A little bit of joy helps those balance. Life is not all suffering. And remembering that, just remembering it, helps us or can help us compost the suffering. So what's the bargain you make with the human condition of suffering? Do you, like Doba, want to triumph over it, at least sometimes? Do you think it brings you closer to God? Perhaps sometimes. Do you want to be no mud, no lotus, arising from the mud of suffering to bloom, and then when the time comes, returning to the mud to nourish new growth? Suffering is like compost. It will break you down in order to turn you into something else, quite possibly something nutritious and useful. Face suffering honestly. Don't get stuck in blame or guilt or denial if you can help it. Feel your suffering. It may seem like it, but the sorrow and the anger will not kill you. And after a while, they ease. You carry them perhaps a little easier. Allow yourself to learn from your suffering. Take responsibility for your part, if any, and let go of whether it's deserved or not. Life happens unfairly. What can you learn? What can you learn about yourself? What can you learn about other people? What can you learn about life? Let your suffering change you. These are hard times. These are miserable times that we live in. There's so much suffering all around, and perhaps there always is. It feels hard now. So let's help each other through. Let's help each other compost our suffering. No mud, no lotus. May it be so. Wake now, my senses. Hymn number 298. Please rise in body or spirit.
Wait now, my senses, can hear call. Feel the deep power of it all. Deep with love and the creation of your power. Giving, receiving, as love shows us how. Wake now, my reason, reach out to the blue. Join with each pilgrim who begs for the truth. Honor the beauty and wisdom of God. Honor thy limit and praise of sunlight. Wake now, most passion, give heed to the cry. Voices of summer fill the bright sky. Make as your neighbor most tender and precious. Making and striving their hardships to
Thank you, Reverend Linda Anderson. Thank you, Dennis Raffelock. Again, if you are visiting for the first time or the 50th time, and you are in agreement with our values, our mission, and our UU principles, we hope you will find a home here and come for at least the 500th time. If you are joining us on Zoom, this room will remain open for a few minutes after our service concludes for informal conversation. If you are joining us in the meeting house, we invite you to join us for coffee in the fellowship room or outside, but it's really hot, so you're welcome to stay in. And the Reverend Linda Anderson has the last words for us.
Reverend Barbara Peskin has the last words. Often we are found in our grief and comforted, calmed by some kindness, brought alive again by beauty that catches us undefended. Even when the sun is most thin and far, even at the hour that the storm is at its height, we can go through. Love, do not let us go. And as we extinguish our chalice, please speak with me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go in peace.
Our closing song is Let Your Love Shine Through in Everything You Do, another original by Dennis Raffelock.
When I have a troubled time and I'm living in my mind, I just sing this simple song and instantly the trouble's gone. Let your love shine through in everything you do. Let your heart sing out whenever you're in doubt. Let your wisdom speak, it's the truth you really seek. Let your light shine bright every day and every night. If I feel a bit confused and I think I have the blues, and I want my troubles to end, I just sing this song again. Let your love shine through in everything you do. Let your heart sing out whenever you're in doubt. Let your wisdom speak, it's the truth you really seek. Let your light shine bright every day and every night. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da. If I feel a bit confused and I think I have the blues and I want my troubles to end, I just sing this song again. Let your love shine through in everything you do. Let your heart sing out whenever you're in doubt. Let your wisdom speak, it's the truth you really see. Let your light shine bright every day and every night. Let your love shine through in everything you do. Let your heart sing out whenever you're in doubt. Let your wisdom speak, it's the truth you really seek. Let Let your light shine bright every day and every night. Thank you so much. Thank you. A pleasure being here. Thank you.